February is the shortest month of the year, but definitely not short on opportunities for entrepreneurs. This episode, we're diving into two topics that might surprise you in the best way. First up, music. If you run a cafe, a retail store, or a gym, really any space where customers walk through the door, you already know how essential the right soundtrack can be. But what about the rules behind playing music in your business? I'll be chatting with Kit Wheeler from SOCAN, who's here to break down how music licensing actually works, why it matters, and how small business owners can stay compliant without it being complicated or expensive. And spoiler, it's simpler than you think. And we'll shift gears to February's big spending moment, Valentine's Day. Sure, Black Friday and the winter holidays get all the attention, but is Valentine's Day quietly becoming an even bigger shopping event in Canada? Moneris' own data expert Sean McCormick joins us to unpack what the consumer spending data is telling us, which industries are seeing the biggest love day lift, and how businesses can position themselves to take advantage of the February rush. When it comes to the month of February, these two topics make beautiful music together. Why? Because it's just good business. Whether you run a cafe, create online content, host events, or simply play music in your workspace, the rules around music rights matter. And understanding them can protect your business and support the artists who make the music we all rely on. So to help us break it all down, I'm joined by Kit Wheeler from SOCAN. That's the Society of Composers, Authors, and Music Publishers of Canada. Kit, thank you for joining me today. I've really been looking forward to this conversation.
So am I. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start with the easiest question. What does SOCAN do?
So I think the easiest way to explain what we do is talk about the people we represent. SOCAN members are the songwriters, the music creators, publishers that you hear on radio, TV, or in your local bar or restaurant.
Okay, well, so this is a business podcast. So why would small business owners care about like music licensing and rights management and stuff like that?
I think the way to talk about music licensing and why business owners should care is first, the tariffs, which really dictates the licensing, is approved by the Copyright Board of Canada and it's enforceable by law. So there is a legal obligation to have a music license. But really, to answer your question about why business owners should care, we should care about the songwriters who write the music, who make a living from their creations, and that writing music is their small business. So the first step is we collect those licensing fees,
right,
and then we turn that around to pay royalties to the songwriters and the publishers who own that music.
When I think about music in small businesses, I'm thinking the dentist's office, obviously in bars, everywhere you go, wherever there's music, at the barber shop. So what are some of the misconceptions about music licensing that maybe small business owners don't consider when they start?
So a common misconception is when a business owner plays music from their music subscription, from their phone or their player, that music subscription is for personal use. So when they play that music in public, in their restaurant, for public consumption, that's when the music license is needed. Even though you've paid for that subscription, but it's your personal subscription. The moment you put it out into the public, in your restaurant or bar, then a music license is required.
Right. So even around holiday time where, some of the radio stations go to all holiday music all the time, and maybe they just put that on their loudspeaker, that's infringement on the music rights then.
I wouldn't say it's infringement per se. I would say that when you're using music, and whether it's holiday music or whether it's 80s music, it does require a music license. By not paying for that license, that's when we start to get into an infringement. They should be paying for a license to use music, like a license to drive a car.
Sure.
Like you do need a license to operate that vehicle. You need a license to use music.
So the best way for a small business owner to ensure they're not in violation, obviously, is to pay these rights. I mean, businesses like to know what their fixed costs are up front. What kind of cost are we looking at here?
So for a small business, the way the license fee is calculated is square footage. If you have a small bar, a small restaurant, it is a small fee by square footage. Larger venues, of course, will pay a higher licensing fee. So I can say that it is affordable. It is the cost of doing business.
Right.
It's No different from paying your hydro bill. It is a cost that you need to pay to run the business. If you're using hydro, you pay your hydro bill. If you use music, you pay your music bill.
Right. If somebody subscribes to a service that provides me, like I'm thinking back to the old days in the grocery store. I don't know if I want to use a brand name, but you know the kind of music that the elevator music that you'd hear in grocery stores or in elevators. Would paying for that service include the licensing fee, or is that like on top?
That's a very good question. So if you purchase a service from a music supplier,
right,
then you don't need to pay a separate license for that. It's covered under the music supplier. So we work with music suppliers who supply music to small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be covered just via that supplier.
Okay, good to know. So there's kind of an easy one-stop shop. If you are thinking you want to have some music on, there are services out there. Just like you would pay for your personal service, there is one for your business.
That's right. Exactly.
Is there a way for businesses to support more Canadian-specific artists in their licensing?
Oh, yes. Of course you can.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a bar owner and you have live music a few nights a week, it's always encouraged to book your local musicians or your local bands. A lot of singer-songwriters, they start their career touring small venues across Canada.
Right.
So by booking those Canadian bands, by paying your licensing fees, that will directly support Canadian talent.
Amazing. I love that. Now I'm a musician. I'm in a cover band though. So when I go out and I play other bands' music. That bar owner, are they paying a different license for live music as opposed to recorded music?
No. So as a band that plays cover music, we love it. There is a fee for bars that offer live music. And it's the same fee whether you play your own music or whether you're playing cover music. So your job as the band should send in your set list because we will pay royalties for the music that you perform.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Because I never knew
they're
that.
the ones who wrote the music.
I'm going to start sending my set list in. All right. Good to know.
Yes. We love it when you send your set list in because you're playing someone else's music in public. We want to make sure that they get royalties for that.
And we have a very Canadian heavy set list. So that'd be great.
Yeah. Money will go to the songwriters.
I love it. Again, I'm a musician, so I appreciate trying to get artists paid. How challenging is this to enforce?
To be honest, it is very hard to enforce and ensure every business is properly licensed. The challenge is reaching the vast number of small businesses across Canada. Right. Although we reach out as much as we can, given the size of our country and the number of small businesses, we encourage owners to come to us, go to our website for more information. You can obtain your license through our website. So it is very hard because not a lot of businesses know about SOCAN and the need to get a music license. So the reach out and the education is really important. And this is a great way to do that reach out. So I appreciate this.
Yeah, happy to do this. Now, let's talk a little bit about the music industry. It's no secret. It's seen major disruptions over the last 20 years with streaming, user-generated content, and social media gaming, and so much more. Some changes have reduced artists' income, while others have opened up new opportunities. So what future trends do you see emerging, and how is SOCAN preparing to ensure that those creators are getting fairly compensated?
Digital music has changed the way most people consume music. Back in the day, we had records and we had CDs, and now it's streaming. So we had to adapt to these new business models. We had to develop licensing structures that we can work with these digital services to make sure that the licensing fee is fair to our rights holders. We also had to develop ways to manage the volume of data that comes from these streaming services. So definitely we have to adapt and change as we see these disruptions happen in the music industry. The way we look at the future is, where are people spending their time?
Right.
So we're seeing the rise in social media and people consuming podcasts, people spending a lot of time in gaming. So we work with these businesses to make sure they're properly licensed. And one last thing, I know this is a bit of a long answer, but SOCAN has been around for 100 years. Yeah. We have certainly seen a lot of changes in that time and been able to adapt to these changes.
Very cool. Again, I love what you guys do and appreciate that you're doing it for the musicians out there. I'm going to have to bring this topic up, and it's a topic, a lot of people don't like talking about, especially when it comes to artistic endeavor, but AI. I mean, in terms of future trends, this is the big one that everyone's talking about. It was, one of the top 3 stories from last year. AI generated music. What's SOCAN doing to ensure that creators are protected?
So AI is here. It's not going away, and it's going to expand. So it's been around for decades, but what we have seen in the last few years is this boom of generative AI.
Yeah.
And the technology has grown so quickly. It's moved so quickly in the last few years. So to be honest, we're figuring it out. We're working with government policy. We're working with other societies like ours around the world to find ways to license AI. So we believe that SOCAN and rights organizations like ours has a role in copyright as it relates to AI generated music. So the work we're doing now is to determine what our role is. How do we license this music use? And we're going to find a solution together. But I don't have an answer now, but we absolutely know this is an important thing to sort through.
All right. Final question. Where can listeners learn more about SOCAN and how it supports the creators and the businesses? Where can they go?
If you want to learn more about SOCAN, I encourage your listeners to go to our website at socan.com. If you want more information around how to license your business, we have another website, which is called intandemlicensing.com. I'm hoping that all of this information is going to be in your show notes. So we'll include the URLs to our websites.
Yes, absolutely. We'll include everything, all the links we just talked about in the show notes below. Thank you so much, Kit, for joining me today. I was looking forward to it and you didn't disappoint. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's been a long, cold, snowy winter so far, but it seems like we're finally getting a break from Mother Nature. Could Ontario groundhog Warton Woolley prediction for an early spring come true? I wouldn't put any money on it. A prediction without cold hard data is merely a guess. And speaking of cold hard data, I'm joined by our consumer spending data expert, Sean McCormick, to talk about this year's Valentine's Day spend. Sean, welcome back to Just Good Business.
Good to be back.
Now, Sean, we all know that Valentine's Day is a big day for certain business sectors such as restaurants, florists, and jewelry. How did things pan out this year for Valentine's Day?
Well, we've been digging into Valentine's Day a little bit the last couple of years, and there's a really important conclusion to be drawn, is that Valentine's Day as a shopping event is significant. It's right. The data is all arrows are pointing to Valentine's Day having the same kind of lift effect. It's in the realm of Black Friday, Al.
It's crazy.
When you're looking at week over week data, that's how you assess the impact of a shopping event. Year over year is comparing the impact of the event that year to the impact of the event the year before. But when you look at week over week data, when you look at Valentine's Day on February 14th versus February 7th, so same day of the week, 1 week prior, we saw a 48% lift in total spend. Here's the perspective. Here's the context. Black Friday was 25% increase versus the previous Friday. Wow.
Yeah, that's insane. I would not have put money on Valentine's Day outspending Black Friday.
Well, and there's a lot. There's actually some, people would ask, wow, how can that be true? Well, a couple of things to consider is that right around Black Friday, beginning of November, December, that's typically a higher spending period of the year, right? The fall, people are spending money at a fairly constant rate. In February, consumers are still recoiling from the holidays, right? You've just paid off that Visa and MasterCard. Well, have you paid off or not? Depending on how much you spent in the holidays, but you've just got through that season of eye-watering spending. So January and February, consumers aren't typically spending a lot of money. So the bar is lower, right? So when you get an event like Valentine's Day, which is a call to action, and let's be clear, it is a call to action. If you don't accept that call to action, you must live with the consequences at home, right? So you think about your own spending, right? So let's say you go out and you buy, a dozen roses. Well, the dozen roses at the florist aren't going to cost you $45. They're going to cost you $70. Right. That's just the way it is on Valentine's Day. So that's $70 that you wouldn't have spent the Friday before, very likely. You might go out for dinner. So there, depending on the dinner, that could range, a couple's dinner, it could range from $60 to $660, depending on how, on your propensity to spend on dinner. Sure. That's likely $600 to $660. Might not have spent 1 week prior. Let's not forget about the Valentine's Day cards. Have you seen how much a greeting card costs now? Like, you're talking $10 to $15. Yeah. So that's another 10 to 15 that you weren't spending 1 week prior. Maybe you're buying jewelry. Were you buying jewelry 1 week prior?
No.
So all of that in aggregate leads to what we saw, which is a 48% increase in total spend right across Canada.
It's also a narrower shopping season as well. I mean, when we talked about the holiday season, we're talking 30 to 60 days. Valentine's Day, it's probably a week's worth of shopping that we're looking at, right?
Yeah, and really you talk about calls to action, no other call to action really in January, February, or maybe even March to get consumers out to the stores to spend money. And I mean, it goes beyond. I mean, people don't even think about the grocery spend and how that will increase. We talk about, going out to a restaurant for a romantic dinner. Well, restaurants aren't the only option, especially with restaurant inflation these days. I mean, grocery spend volume on Valentine's Day, Saturday versus the previous Saturday, up 37%.
Oh, wow.
So this is the power of a good shopping event. And if you asked me, Al, I think there's an opportunity for merchants and retailers to hitch their wagon to this, to think about beyond the simple roses and chocolates and a dinner for two. Why not? Like, what would be standing in the way of an electronics store having a Valentine's Day sale? You kidding me? If my wife got me a brand new 7.2 channel amplifier for Valentine's Day, that I wouldn't be over the moon for that. It probably costs about the same as a dozen roses on Valentine's Day.
Right.
So there's that.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned restaurants, and that's probably the big winner, right? I mean, this year, things were stacked in favor of restaurants because Valentine's Day landed on a Saturday. So wouldn't that kind of hurt the week over week numbers, because you're kind of comparing 2 days that would normally be busy anyway for restaurants?
Yeah, it's really difficult to increase spend in a restaurant on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, because the restaurants are typically at capacity Thursday, Friday, Saturday, especially Saturday and Friday. So when you see numbers like a 44% increase in restaurant spend, that was the number.
Yeah.
That can be attributed to bigger bills. Right. So you're out for Valentine's Day. It's an occasion. You're not just going out on Saturday night. So then you ask yourself the question, if I usually go out for dinner with my loved one and it's usually on a Saturday night, am I going to throw caution to the wind and get that, $70 bottle of wine?
Right.
Am I going to maybe have that second or third round of cocktails? People love a good restaurant experience, but they're only going to love a good restaurant experience and maximize on the restaurant experience if it's an occasion. And Valentine's Day is an occasion. And I think with that 44% increase in spend, I mean, think about it. The math's kind of easy. So if you usually spend $100 on a dinner for two, which is pretty easy to do nowadays, what could you do to increase the size of that bill by $40, which, by the way, includes tax and tip? Right. So you're probably spending about another $30. Well, what is that? That's an appy and 2 drinks if you're lucky, right? So that's how you get that 44%.
Now, I'm going to assume that the biggest percentage numbers increase we're going to see here would be in florists, because other than weddings and other occasions like that, Valentine's Day would be a focal point for a florist.
Everybody loves to hear how the florists do on Valentine's Day. This makes their year, right? So across Canada, florists spend on Valentine's Day week over week up 457%. So 4.5x.
Yeah.
Some interesting regional variances. Quebec and Atlantic Canada purchasing flowers at a rate that just crushes the rest of the country. So Atlantic Canada, dollar volume at florists was up 861%. So 8.5 times. Yeah. Quebec plus 711%. So 7 times what you'd see. The lowest increase in Canada, Al, belongs to Ontario at just 366%. So basically half the increase that we saw in Quebec.
Yeah, Ontario and
I know Ontario
this year.
and Quebec love to do this, right? So talk amongst yourselves.
And let's look at jewelers, since, the top 3, right? Restaurant, florists, and jewelers. I mean, you mentioned some others now, but those seem to be the top ones. How did the jewelry sector look?
Well, jewelry sector is interesting. So it's difficult to measure jewelry week over week because the dollar value of the purchases is so high. You might get a couple of ballers come in and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on diamonds, and it spikes it. So it's difficult to go week over week. So we looked at year over year data for Valentine's Day in the jewelry sector. And what we saw was actually quite encouraging when you think about, whether consumers have money to spend, disposable income. We saw a 17% increase year over year in jewelry spend this Valentine's Day. Yeah. So Valentine's Day 25 versus Valentine's Day 24, an increase of 17% year over year.
That's definitely a positive signal in discretionary spend, right? Because jewelry is kind of the epitome of discretionary spend.
Definitely. We commissioned a survey back in the fall, I think it was November, and Canadians were indicating that discretionary spend on things like restaurants, entertainment, and travel were items that they would be reconsidering spend on in the next 6 months. So when you see things like a 17% increase in jewelry year over year on Valentine's Day, it's interesting. But again, that one can be highly influenced by enormous purchases, individual purchases.
You mentioned grocery spend up as well, 37%. Regionally, did you see that it followed the same pattern maybe as the others in terms of who the provincial winners and losers were in this case?
Yeah, so if we look at the total spend number across Canada, I mentioned it being 48%. Slight variances across the country, but not as wide as the florist increases. Quebec leading the way with a 63% week over week increase. So for February 14th versus February 7th. And then the lowest was Manitoba at plus 36%. And everything, all of the other provinces were in and around 40 and 50%. Ontario in at plus 52%, BC in at plus 37%, Alberta plus 43%, and Saskatchewan at plus 47%. So it's not as though there were any numbers that would make any of those provinces blush a little bit, but good spending fervor right across the country. Yeah.
No losers, really. All the numbers were pretty good to the positive side. I mean, and I think that bodes well then for maybe our economic outlook for this year, that we're seeing a little bit of stability. I spoke to Chief Economist Douglas Porter last month, and he was cautiously optimistic, right? That the stability in interest rates and in inflation, that we could maybe, start seeing us pulling out of this, hopefully.
Well, there's a middle step in between consumers spending lots of money, like we saw a couple of years ago, lots of disposable income, they're spending it, and consumers not spending any money at all. And that middle step is being thoughtful and discerning about where consumers are spending their money. And consumers right now are still spending money on experiences. They're still spending money on events. It's the spending that is not providing that emotional payback that they're able to pull back on. So I think we're in that middle step right now. Are consumers still spending? Yes. Are they spending the way they were a couple of years ago? No. And the difference is they're being more thoughtful about the purchases and thinking twice, maybe not giving into impulse the way they might have been 6 months ago.
Sean, if folks wanted to learn more about Moneris Data Services and all the work you guys do, where could they go?
Yeah, MonerisDataServices.com. There's lots of information and lots of content on the site. If you ever want to talk about some custom data, let me know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, as always, Sean.
Thanks, brother.
That's our show for this month. Once again, please check the show notes for links to everything we talked about in this episode. If you have any questions about anything business related, you can email us at podcast@moneris.com and we'll try to answer them in future episodes. Also, you can check out videos to all our interviews on the Moneris YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe to see them as they're released. On behalf of Kit, Sean, myself, and the rest of Moneris, it's just good business saying thank you for listening. See you in March.